All right. Now we welcome, and you know him. He started the legendary Cat House in Hollywood, California. You know him from his many, many stints on MTV, including hosting Headbangers Ball, many things on radio and TV, and all over the place covering sports and music. Mr. Rikki Rachtman, how are you, sir?
I'm doing really good. How are you, Brian?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Very happy to talk about this song. Very
Me
happy
too.
you chose this one because this was the first heavy song I ever heard when I was 11 years old, and one of my friends played me this whole album, Machine Head, but this song, of course, was the first one. And as soon as it came on, I'm like, "Whoa, what is this?" What did you think? And how did you first hear it?
It's exactly, I was very young when that record came out. And I remember sitting at this guy Tommy's house and we were just starting to get into music and we were listening to it. And we first got Deep Purple Machine Head because of the song Smoke on the Water. Because when you're 9 or 10 years old, you figured that's the song you can play, and
Yep.
y'all played it. And so, we put Deep Purple Machine Head on the vinyl, and the first song is Highway Star. Flat out, that song is so damn metal. It's fast, it's heavy, but I went to go re-listen to it again. And I've listened to that song so many times. It really does still hold up. I
Yep.
say it's probably, I at times I've said that Kinks, You Really Got Me is the first metal song or all these things. But when it really comes down to it, this is the first that I call metal song that really stood out and really made me think like, oh, I like something that might not be um whatever is on the radio at the time, the theme of Laverne and Shirley, I don't know. So, and I was like, this song is awesome. And then what you don't, now when you look back, and a lot of us have been guilty of this, you probably not, but have said like, keyboards don't belong in metal. Okay, well, this song is so damn metal. And when we were kids, we were doing air guitar, we were doing like, it's just like this song. Look how happy I am when I talk about this song. This song, and first of all, I've always loved cars. I've always been a motorhead in the fact of not only loving Motorhead, but loving things with motors. I love cars. I love fast cars. And this song is just, think about what the song is. No, but it's good. It's talking about cars, it's talking about girls, it's talking about everything. And it's just fast and it's heavy. And there's even one part that, and I know both of us are big fans of Thin Lizzy, that there's almost a part where it almost has that twin guitar solo sound to it,
Yep.
but it's the keyboards, like that part where it goes, it's just, look at it. I get so excited about this song. And to me, we had talked many times about what song I was going to pick. And I picked like, oh, I wanted to do Suicidal Institutionalized and I want to do Carcass because those are bands, that I love. But I'm like, no. You're talking about, 100 songs that really are such an important part of metal. And my God, this is an important song. And it's definitely important to me. And to know that, you look at it as being one of the first metal songs that you listen to. And I know, this is the original album that I had when I was like, look, it's so thrash, but that's the
Nice.
original one that I had. And you know what? The whole album is great.
Yep.
The whole album is so good. And it's funny. You can't ask anybody our age and you could say like, hey, where is Montreux? And everybody our age is going to say, you mean on the Lake Geneva shoreline? Like we all know that bit of geography only from that song. But my God, Highway Star is such a good song for a million reasons.
Yeah, 100%. And it was, we're not doing a countdown here on this thing,
Right.
but it would be for sure in my top 20 songs, especially when it comes to defining heavy metal. And we talk a lot about 70s stuff on this podcast because to me that's where metal was formed. Like these were the songs that formed what came later. If it wasn't for Deep Purple, there would be no Metallica, there would be no Iron Maiden, there'd be no, no almost anybody. So, and funny the thing you mentioned about the organ, but the organ was played. Hey, there's a cat. Look at that. Hello, kitty.
Lucha. You probably
But
appreciate being a wrestling fan. I have one cat named Lucha, and the other one is named Santo.
oh, nice, awesome. But anyway, so the Hammond organ that he was playing was played through a Marshall amp, which is why it had that guitar tone to it because it basically ran through a Marshall amplifier. So, because I didn't even really, I had no idea when I was a kid what anything sounded like. I just thought they were all guitars, and it's like, wait, that's an organ he's playing on there. That doesn't make any sense because it's sometimes hard to figure out which is the guitar and which is the organ. But yeah, and when they play it together, you're right. There's that little harmony part that they do that's very Thin Lizzy, and of course, this was well, Thin Lizzy was around at that time, but just
A little bit.
barely
I remember
in
Thin
its
Lizzy.
infancy. But only
I
one
got into
guitar
Thin
player.
Lizzy after. I mean, this is before I got into Alice Cooper,
Yep.
or before I got into Ted Nugent, or before I got into Motorhead. I was in a Motorhead even as a young age, but this was like it for me. I mean, I remember hearing it and just hearing that song, like I said, because I wanted to hear Smoke on the Water. But the first song is Highway Star, and I don't know how anybody could ever listen to that song. And I think that's a defining song for it. If you like that song, you're gonna go into that direction and be okay. And it's just like, and now when I listen to it, and the keyboards are so like,
Yeah.
you know, and then
Heavy.
it's like it's got like the greatest guitar solo ever by a keyboard.
Yeah, right. I would agree with you there. Also, it's we talked a lot about where did speed metal come from, or thrash metal, or whatever, and this is certainly they have Speed King by Deep Purple, which is a lot of people point to as one of the original ones, but this song is super fast and very heavy too, and you got to remember this came out in 1972 when
Right. I think it
Black
was
Sabbath
recorded in
was forming.
71, maybe.
71, yeah, 71. And well, listen to Smoke on the Water and you know all about the recording of that album. But
Right.
yeah, but it came out in 72, and I mean, I heard it a few years later by the time I got to it, but I was like, whoa, this is incredible, and just such a I mean, that Deep Purple in general is a very important band, and obviously Richie Blackmore is one of the greatest guitar players that ever lived, and it certainly influenced a million guitar players, including all the famous people we know from all the bigger bands that came later. But yeah, just such an amazing record. And also, we just talked about the production of it with Jay Rustin. Of course, Martin Birch was the engineer back then, and he's my all-time favorite producer. He's produced probably half of all the records that are my top 10 all time, including Number of the Beast and Rainbow Rising and Black Sabbath, Mob Rules, I mean, all that sort of stuff. So there's a really good team of people there that clearly made this happen, and we're really creating a sound because, again, you have Sabbath doing their heavy thing, and then Deep Purple was right along with them, again, creating this new sound of heavy music.
But now, when I was a kid, I also remember, and I even got to see him live. I even, which is weird because I don't look at myself as a keyboard guy now, but I really liked Emerson, Lake and Palmer
Oh
when I
yeah,
was a
me too.
kid. And when I think back on some of the songs that I liked that were so, I mean, Keith Emerson, the keyboards were so great. I saw him live when I was a little kid, and now that I look back at songs that I listened to, which I never thought of, how keyboard influenced, there were a lot of people that I were hanging out with that was playing Yes, and there were so many bands that really keyboard was almost stood in front of electric guitar sometimes.
Yeah, and in the 70s, all of those bands that came out at first usually had one guitar player. I mean, Alice Cooper was different because he had two guitar players, and that was before Thin Lizzy kind of
Right.
really highlighted the two guitar tone, and of course Judas Priest as well. But yeah, a lot of bands just had the one guitar, and then they either had, in the case of Sabbath, just a guitar player. But in Deep Purple, yeah, you had this keyboard player, and John Lord wrote a lot of those songs as well.
It's such a, and the thing is, there's certain things, when you get to be my age, you look at back at certain things that are nostalgic, and the ones that you can remember that bring smiles to your face are things like the Deep Purple Machine Head album, because I remember sitting in Van Nuys, California at Tommy's house
Yep.
and listening to that record, and I was just like, and I was there because of Smoke on the Water. I was there because Smoke on the Water, which, everybody's heard so many times, but I'm glad that Highway Star, which still was a big hit, was their second biggest hit.
Yep.
And but it still wasn't like, you didn't hear it as much as you heard Smoke on the Water. So you never got sick of Highway Star. And I've heard different versions, X Cops does a version, and there's a couple of, I think did Typo Negative do Highway Star too?
Yeah, there's quite a few actually versions of it, and I mean all very very well done, and but certainly the original is there. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I to this day I remember what the bedroom looked like when I was sitting on the bed listening to this record, because again I had no clue, I hadn't even heard Smoke on the Water yet. He just like, hey, there's this cool new band that just came out, and he had heard Smoke on the Water and bought the record and played it for me, and I was like, what is this? Never heard anything like this. It's incredible.
Do you remember what the first rock poster you hung on your wall was?
That's a good question. Probably Kiss, I'm gonna guess, because I got into Purple and then Black Sabbath, then Alice Cooper and all that stuff. But it was really, when I heard Kiss, I became a massive fan. So probably Kiss at that. I think at that point.
I had, and it's so weird that like I really have like serious memory problems, but there's things that I remember, and I had a 5 foot by 3 foot poster of Jimi Hendrix behind my bed,
Oh wow.
and then I had a poster of like some guy doing a cross up on a motorcycle, and it was those typical things, and I remember all of that stuff. But yeah, that Machine Head and that song Highway Star was the one that just like. And thank you, Deep Purple, for putting out that song. Because if it would have been, I don't know, whatever the songs were then, Captain and Tennille, it didn't have the same effect on me.
No, well, that's the whole thing about, people ask like why like for example, I just did a little quick shout out. I did the Jim Rome podcast, which is
I
for
saw that. Congratulations. That's
thanks, man,
something
for
that's being a metalhead that I'm like, well, right on, you know?
that's amazing. I've been listening to him for like 30 years, and they do play
Yeah.
our bumps, and they know who I am and everything, which is kind of mind blowing in general. But he asked me like, what drew you to metal? And I go, I don't know. I just heard this music, and I was like, wow, this is just incredible. And it just, for some reason, I've talked about this with a lot of different people. You feel something when you hear it. It could be any type of music, but it's like there's no reason why other than just like I heard this, and I went, whoa, this is really cool. And how do I get more of this?
I think what it was for me, especially because troubled youth, as most of us were, and that I think what it was is when you were a kid, and if you were a bad student and just cared about smoking weed and skateboarding, and then you hear something, and I really believe that it was, oh, this is for us. Like maybe this is not on the radio. This is for the bad people. I mean, later I got more into punk rock, so then the same people that were in the metal when I was younger all spit at me and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the kids with Judas Priest, like, they didn't even know what to say because they didn't know what punk rock was. But I remember when I first listened to that stuff, because it was deep, it was definitely Deep Purple, and it was the Machine Head album that did everything. And like I said, Highway Star is to this day. You said how you would put it if I made the list of the most important or early songs that really were metal. You'd have to put that song because that's just like fast, heavy, and it's mostly keyboard.
Yeah, I know. It's so crazy. There is a great lead by Blackmore on there, but you're right. And it's interesting because, I had a pretty boring childhood. I grew up, fine, never got into trouble. I didn't smoke or drink or anything until I was like 21. Got good grades, played baseball, this sort of stuff. But single mom, so maybe there's something there. But yeah, but it's, I mean, that's what we all get drawn to. We get drawn to this very aggressive music that you just, especially as a what is I 11, so you start getting rebellious and all the stuff going on. It's like, oh yeah, this is fun, this is fast and heavy, and I like whatever this is, I like it.
And when we were young and we heard or saw pictures of evil bands, we bought in like,
Oh hell yeah.
How is Alice Cooper going to play tomorrow if he chops his head off tonight? It's like we bought into this. When you would say like, well, Gene Simmons is the demon, well, it's probably because he's really a demon. Like we bought into all of the evil stuff 100%. And I think maybe in music today that innocence is definitely lost of us just not knowing. We didn't know very much. I mean, I did my book report in school as a little kid on a paperback about Alice Cooper,
Oh wow.
and we had to look for magazines and little things to find out everything. And it's so funny because even though I've done MTV and radio for so long, I'm quite happy that I don't know too much about a lot of the technical stuff about some of the music that I've always listened to. But with the Machine Head album, it's like we know so much about how they recorded that album and that there was a fire and
Yeah.
it's like that album. It's like, there's so many songs that we don't really know what the lyrics mean and we don't follow the story. But my God, how many people, that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s that still know the lyrics and the lyrics to Machine Head is to Highway Star as well. And Space Truckin' was on that album,
Yep, yep,
and was Lazy on that album too?
yep.
Lazy. Burn wasn't on that album. Burn was before,
No,
correct?
Burn was, yeah, Burn was actually later.
Oh,
Because
Burn was later.
yeah, that was Ian Gillan was gone by then. That was Glenn
Okay.
Hughes and David Coverdale.
It's funny because I listened to, I was really into Deep Purple in the 70s when I was just a kid. And then in the 90s, even like the Headbangers Ball thing I didn't really wasn't into Deep Purple, but then I would hear songs again that sounded very poppy and catchy and part of that like 80s, 90s rock scene. And I heard the music and I go, I always liked that song. And then I was like, oh, that was Deep Purple, because it didn't sound anything like the other Deep Purple. Like, what was that one song? Like Thrill of a Chase or something, like, I don't remember what it's called.
Oh yeah, well that was when they first came back together after being broken up for a while. I think that was early '90s.
But it
that's
was
a great,
still a catchy
a
song.
great song. Oh yeah, it's a great
sounded,
song.
and it didn't sound anything like Deep Purple.
Yeah, well
You
that was,
know?
like I said, that was Deep Purple Mock, whatever it is, because they've had so many different incarnations. But that was when Ian Gillan came back to the band
Right.
in the '90s. It is a great album and a great song. I actually saw that tour. I think that might have been the only time I saw them, or the first time I saw them with Ian Gillan, because obviously I was too young in the earlier days. But and he was a great songwriter and just such a great singer too. I mean, that's the other thing about, maybe Ian Gillan more so than, everybody can argue about this, even more so than Ozzy or Robert Plant, was the original metal singer. Like he had the high screams, and I mean, Bruce Dickinson was in awe of him, and his whole singing thing was around him, and Ian Gillan, for that style of singing for metal, really was, he was the first guy really doing it the right way, in my opinion.
Deep Purple was a band I'm pretty sure I never saw live. But I remember that when I started to get to, my dad managed bands when I was a little kid. I didn't live with
Oh
my
wow.
father, but my father was managing bands. So occasionally when there were concerts, like that's how I got to go see Queen with Thin Lizzy opening.
Oh wow.
My dad took me to, and I remember Thin Lizzy on that show. And that's how I got to go to some shows when I was younger. But I remember that Deep Purple was playing, I don't know if it was Cal Jam or whatever with the big festival was when I was a kid, but I remember I didn't get to go to that, and I've never saw Deep Purple live.
Yeah, I didn't get to, like I said, I didn't get to see them until later, because by the time I started going, I didn't start going. My mom wouldn't let me start going until I was like 18, so I missed a lot of the early stuff. But they were always really good. Where was Queen Thin Lizzy? Where and when was that? I'm just curious.
It was at the Forum, which was, I believe at that time was called the Fabulous Forum.
Yep. What year? Do you remember?
I know that Michael Jackson went there with Jodie Foster or with Tatum O'Neal. Michael Jackson was there. I think it was Jodie
late
Foster.
70s, maybe.
It would have to be. I was a kid.
Yeah,
And
because
then
I missed
remember
that somehow. And I mean, I saw
Okay.
Queen a bunch, but I didn't get to see them
No,
with
I
Thin
remember
Lizzy.
that show. And then I remember I saw Emerson, Lake and Palmer at the San Bernardino Swing.
Yeah,
Couldn't
I think
tell you who-
I
couldn't
was
tell you
probably
who
at
opened
that one. Oh, by the way,
But
we're talking real quick. We're talking about cars and the car lyrics. So just huge shout out to our buddy Tyler Reddick, who just won the Daytona 500.
Woo!
Yeah,
I am
he's
so happy. I'm so
and he's a
Tyler's
metal.
good
He's a
dude.
metalhead.
He
We did a
hey,
Killswitch Engage car with him before.
he
So
drove a Megadeth car too.
yeah, that's right. That's right. So he's a legit metalhead.
But
So
I
congrats for
really
him.
and now I live out here. I live in Mooresville, North Carolina. So I see Tyler a lot, and I've hung out with Tyler a bunch of times. And Tyler's just a good dude. And
Yep.
I was gonna reach out to him even today and say, like, look, if you want to get a Daytona 500 tattoo, my wife will give, because my wife Leah Vendetta is a
Yeah,
tattoo
yeah.
artist. I go, if you want to get it, because he's been trying to get his kid's name tattooed on him from Leah, and I was like, Leah will give you a Daytona 500 tattoo
Oh
if you
yeah.
want one. And for him to win the race is good because there's a lot of guys that are in NASCAR. Blaney was into metal, Bubba was
Yep.
definitely into metal, Alex Bowman was into metal. And I don't remember, it's so funny. Regan Smith, who doesn't race anymore, he does TV. And I remember that I was at a big festival. Was Tammy calling me? Hold on a second. I remember it was the festival, and of all bands, Avenged Sevenfold was on the festival. And I'd never I don't know where we're going with this, but I'd never seen Avenged Sevenfold. But I started watching them. I'm like, actually, they're not the band I thought they were. I heard like some Maiden riffs, and they kind of reminded me of GNR a little bit. So Regan Smith, the NASCAR driver, goes, would you like to go back and meet the guys? I'm like, okay. And it was the first time a NASCAR driver actually took me to meet a band. And I thought that it's not related to anything we're talking about, but
They're
yes,
good dudes too. But definitely tell Tyler I said hello.
I
That's
will.
awesome that he won that.
It's, whenever you have a driver that's into metal, I'll tell you really quickly. Um, I don't know how much time we have. A little Ryan Blaney story.
We get
I
time.
was doing driver introductions at Dover, and Ryan Blaney was young, and I would introduce the drivers, and they would come behind me, right? So I'm introducing Ryan Blaney. I'd never met him, and he walks behind me, goes, "I want to go see Slipknot," and then he walks off stage, right? So Slipknot comes to town, and I took him to see Slipknot, and I brought
Nice.
him backstage to meet Corey, and it was really cool. And now, there's not a lot of metal people that are into NASCAR, but Florida Frank is from Hatebreed is
Yep.
definitely into it.
Oh,
And
there's quite a few. I mean,
remember
I know
Ryan
quite a
Neff?
few.
Ryan Neff was in Miss May I think.
Okay.
He was in the band Miss May I. Let's tell you, I did a radio show for 20 years talking about NASCAR, and I've never met a person that knew more about NASCAR than that guy, Ryan Neff. I
Oh
think the
wow.
band he was in was Miss May I. And
Sounds about right.
that guy knew so much about NASCAR. And well, okay. I've been friends with Mark Morton for quite a while, but I think the way that we met no, we met at a show, but then we started talking about Richmond NASCAR races, and
Yep.
so he's always been really into NASCAR, and some people just don't get it,
Yeah,
and I
I'm
got
one
out
of
of it for
those.
a while, and now
I'm one of those, but
oh,
that's
you
all
don't
right.
get it?
I mean, I get it. It's just I mean, not to get too far off topic here, but I'm more of a speed guy, so I love IndyCar. That's my favorite racing is IndyCar. It's NASCAR's too slow for me.
Yeah,
I hate to
NASCAR
say
last
it,
year, I didn't
even though
watch.
it's fast.
I didn't watch one single race because I'd worked in the sport for so long, then I didn't.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
fuck that. So I didn't watch any races, and the only sport I watched for a year was wrestling, and but this year I decided to watch Daytona 500, and then for Tyler to win, and Tyler being into metal is always a very good thing.
Yeah, that's the cool thing is there's athletes all over the place in the metal. I know most of them, but there's definitely a lot of NASCAR guys, which is super cool. But
Yes,
I digress. So I wanted to ask you, so what was the first metal record that you ever bought? Because this Machine Head was the first one I bought. Obviously, I heard it and I went and bought it the next day after I heard it.
I didn't buy Machine Head because it was over at my friend's house, but without a doubt, the first metal record that I bought, and I remember buying it at Licorice Pizza for $4.98, was Alice Cooper.
Oh,
And it
which
might have
one?
been Schools Out. It might
Oh,
have been
cool.
Schools Out, but I thought I was into Alice Cooper before that because I really, really, really loved Alice Cooper,
Me too, of course.
and still do. And I'm on tour doing these spoken word shows, and I do a lot of stuff about Alice Cooper in this. I'm sorry for my parrot in the background.
That's
Anybody
okay.
wants anybody wants one? Just hit me up.
We've done a lot of people in New York City, so we get sirens all the time in the background. So you're all good.
But I remember buying Alice Cooper, and I remember back then albums cost $4.98.
Yep, yep.
And that's what I bought it when we said that record store. You grew up in California.
Oh hell yeah! I went to Licorice
And do you
Pizza a
remember
million
Licorice?
times.
They used to have this place called Licorice Pizza, and they had a big jar, and you'd go in there and get free licorice. And I
Yep, yep.
freaking love licorice. I mean, back then people didn't worry about they didn't know any diseases. You just dirty hands, grab licorice. So I'd go there to get licorice. I'd go there to listen to music. And I remember all the record stores we had in the Valley and in Hollywood as a kid because, I didn't have any money when I was younger. So when I could buy records or instead just go there and just listen to music because, for some of us, music and still is so incredibly important. It helped us get through some major
Yep.
things.
Yep.
It puts us in a good space. It gets us motivated. And now today I listen to so many different types of music. I go to see shows of this was the year that holy crap, I think I went to like 6 huge new wave concerts of bands that I'd never seen as a kid. And I was really excited to meet John Taylor from Duran Duran. I got my picture taken with him.
I actually just saw them in Vegas. One of my buddies had an extra ticket and said, "Do you want to go?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I haven't seen them for a long. I don't know that I ever saw them, but
I never did.
I was a fan. But they were amazing. I was like blown away.
So
All live, no tape, all live. They sounded great. The whole thing was awesome. It was really, I was really impressed. Really good.
yeah, this year I saw Devo twice,
Love them.
Billy Idol, which was really good, and I didn't even expect it to be that good. It was
Oh,
really good,
he's incredible.
so good. And of course Steve Stevens, Billy
Yep.
Idol, Devo, Duran Duran, and I saw the B-52s.
Love them too. Well, a lot of that new wave stuff to me when it came out was, I mean, it was heavy. Some of it was heavy rock. Gates of Steel by Devo is a metal
You
song.
told me that when I
listen,
told you I was going to that. You
listen to
told me
that
Gates
riff.
of
It's a
Steel.
metal song, and there's even, even some of the other stuff is there. I mean, it's good rock and roll music for sure.
I
But
think
yeah,
we're in a time right now, I believe, and maybe it's just because the people that I know that are into metal that I talk to, for so many fans that say like it's only metal and all but metal, and I get it, but you have to understand that if you're going to be in a car with Tom Araya, he might be listening to the Beatles, and
yeah.
if you're listening to all these bands, the heaviest of heavy bands, I mean, like I mentioned, Florida Frank again, he's got Devo tattoos,
Oh yeah.
and I had said somewhere that the best concert I saw, which people get mad at me for saying, the best concert I saw in 2025, and I went to a lot of them, was without a doubt My Chemical Romance. And
Oh
everybody's
yeah.
like, ew, emo. I'm like, it ain't emo, okay?
No,
I don't know
they're
what emo is. It's not emo. It was the best concert ever. And then I find out so many people like Gary Holt or stuff like that are into MCR
oh
because
yeah.
they're just such an incredible band.
Well, that early stuff like Black Parade and stuff, that's, I mean, it's 90s metal. It's heavy. It's heavy. Gerard is a huge metalhead. He's a massive King Diamond fan. So it's, there's all metal involved in a lot of that stuff, and it creeps into different genres. And, at Metal Blade, we do all sorts of different stuff. So, because I like
Right.
all
You
sorts
did, for instance, day one. Since
yeah,
day one,
I
you have.
like different stuff, and I'm not just going to only listen to, death metal the whole time because you get bored with that. And I think, there's room for everybody, but I get it if your thing is just a one genre and that's it. Totally cool. I
The
get it,
thing,
but
the thing that I'm very happy about now, which is funny because people of the, 80s, 90s rock genre that got so upset about is when, because I own the Cat House and I'm very, very proud to come from that area. And that era. And even though, we were always listening to Motorhead and Megadeth and stuff like that, there was a lot of the stuff that I didn't really get into until like when people say like if I could be part of any music scene, what would it be? It's like, look, I was part of the greatest scene. The 80s rock scene was the best, but like I wish I was part of that New York City hardcore scene because
sure.
it seems so tight. And now I listen to Sick of It All so much, and I'm listening to Agnostic Front. I love, when I finally met Harley. I remember I was at a show and Harley Flanagan was there. And sometimes when you're the guy at Headbangers Ball, you're sometimes scared to meet some of the people, and it's only my own brain that does
Yeah,
this.
but
But I'm like,
most of those guys are metalheads too. So
oh God, I don't want to meet him. They're gonna meet. And he was like the sweetest guy.
oh
Oh,
yeah,
I love you. And it's like, it's funny. And now people always like, why aren't you on the Monsters of Rock cruise? And I did it and I hated it. I love the people on it, but I freaking hated it. So then they asked me to be on the Headbangers boat on year one. And oh my God, I loved it. Made so many new friends. I'm probably the oldest guy on the boat. I get to see the legendary bands that I've never seen, but also every time I leave, I go like, okay, this was my first year. It's like, okay, now I love Fit for an Autopsy, which I'd never seen before. And the last time I was there, I love Crowbar. I'd seen Crowbar before.
oh
But
yeah.
the last time I was there, I had never seen Walls of Jericho, who's a band that's been around for a long time.
Yep, they're amazing.
But to me, they're brand new. So I'm watching Walls of Jericho and I'm like, this girl's amazing. And I go to these cruises, and this will be my fourth year. Thank you, Lamb of God, for bringing me back in Six Man. But I go on these cruises and I get to see the bands that I do know, whether it's the Carcasses or the Lamb of Gods or whichever big metal bands are on it. But then I get exposed to some of the metal bands that might be 30 years old, but I was never into them before. And I spoke to you about this earlier, and I know we're not talking about Deep Purple right now,
It's all
but
right.
Carcass was on Headbangers Ball, but I was never really that into Carcass back when I was on Headbangers Ball. You got to understand that everybody was giving me so much music from all
Yep.
genres that I was listening to all different stuff and this and that. And so now that I'm older and I can listen to whatever I want, and I just became the hugest Carcass fan. So I could go back to all these albums that I never listened to when I was younger, and to me they are new. If I to hey every I mean I know we played Heartwork on Headbangers Ball, but I didn't really get into a lot of that stuff when I was back in the 90s. So the
Sure.
beauty for me now is as I got older, I listen to much, much heavier stuff than I ever did, which I spoke to other people that do as well. Most people don't. Most people stay in that same genres, but I
Yeah.
got into much heavier stuff in my older age. So when I would listen to death metal or black metal, and I'd be like, I like it, I like the music, but I wasn't really into the lyrics. And then I'm driving, and I'm like, this is like almost all I listen to now, and it's but for me, I can say, hey, I've only been into Carcass for like 5 years, but I'm still buying the T-shirts. Please don't ask me to name 3 songs from some of the
No,
bands.
that's all that stuff is great. I know you've shouted out Amon Amarth a bunch too, which
Oh my
much
God. So I
appreciated.
do, I got to tell you the story since I'm not saying it in my show. Okay.
Okay.
So here's when I went to Amon Amarth, I had neck surgery. And I tell this story in my spoken word show, One Foot in the Gutter. And I tell a story about how when I go to shows, that I like to go to shows. And when I went to see Amon Amarth, I didn't go there being the guy that goes, "Oh, Eddie is a fake monster," or that. I went as the kid that was watching the Alice Cooper shows. And I'm like, that's a fucking real Viking, and they're really fighting
Yeah.
with swords. And then when everybody got on the ground and they all started rowing a boat, I had neck surgery. So I'm like, Leah, I'm getting on the ground, I'm rowing a boat. And I say in my show, look, I might be old as hell. I can't get in the pit, but I can row a boat like a motherfucker. And
There
that's
you
what
go.
I say in my show. And I liked Amon Amarth because when I first heard Amon Amarth, if you're very cerebral about that, you might not like it. But if you are into that comic book part of metal that metal loves, you will love them. And I really like the music too. And I love the show. And I bought the t-shirt because I had so much fun at that show.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, they kind of cross over a bit. Even our friend Eddie Trunk, who's not a death metal guy whatsoever, he called me up one day and said, "Hey, I want to go see him on a Amarth. They're playing in Vegas." I'm like, "Oh, great! You can come with me." So we went to the show, and he was like, "They're really good. The music is great." He starts to understand the vocals. We hung out with the band afterwards, and people slowly come around. I have a lot of other friends who, like you said, who didn't listen to a lot of super heavy stuff in the earlier days, and now they get older, they're really into it. So you just never know. And there's a lot of music out there, so it's hard to, when your job isn't just to consume everything all the time, it's difficult.
And there's also so many bands like, when I first met, I don't even know how many years ago it was that I first met Lamb of God. They were just starting to tour with Slipknot opening up. So it was a long time ago. And I remember when I went into their bus and they were all like, kind of like saying really nice things to me, and I thought they were mocking me, and I truly thought like they were saying like, oh yeah, and we really love, oh, I love Faster Pussycat, and I thought these guys were like kind of making fun of me, but then I learned later like these people really love a lot of the bands from that era. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
care if you could be into you know well, I don't know about Deicide, but you could be into some of the heaviest stuff, but you can't listen to a Cinderella record and say like, this isn't some great bluesy rock and roll,
Well,
you know?
you also got to look at when everybody kind of grew up and what ages they were, because there's a ton of death metal bands, or even like the metal. I hate throwing around these stupid terms of metal core bands, who all love that 80s kind of glam pop stuff, because that's when they grew up, and that's a lot of them. That's the first thing they heard. That was their gateway to hearing heavier stuff. So I always go, that's fine. I mean, and by the way, Cinderella's an amazing band. So
Of course. But when I was on the last Headbangers boat, and it's I have all these mental issues that I have to deal with, and I was on the Headbangers boat, and I was asked to sing NIB from Sabbath. And it's like, Willie Adler's playing and all these like just great musicians. And it's front of the big, I've played music before, but it was the biggest crowd that I've ever sang. It's like 2,000 people, right?
yeah.
And it ain't easy singing Sabbath.
No,
And so
no.
I'm sitting backstage scared. And every one of the guys in Obituary took me aside, and the guys in Obituary, dude, relax, you're gonna nail. I'm like, these are the Tardy brothers, you know, and they're being
They're
so
the
kind
best dudes, though.
to bands that I've always
Oh
liked
yeah.
Obituary. I've seen them live a bunch of times, but I always had this built in my head that like they're gonna hate me because they were like, hey man, you're gonna fucking nail this, and you're
Oh
gonna,
yeah.
and that's why I love going on the Headbangers Boat, because there's so many people that I kind of stayed back, like, oh, do I want to go talk to Kirk Winston? You know, do I want to talk to Kirk? And these guys are like sweethearts. I mean,
All nice.
I have so much fun. And then when I go to some of the other shows, which is the people that are in the era that I grew up in, some of these people are like pricks to me. And I'm like, fuck you, you know? And I'm like,
Yeah.
really? Really? But I don't care. I'm having the best time of my life.
Good.
Just
So yeah, so you're about to go out on tour. So tell me about your stand-up show.
this is without a
Or
doubt.
spoken word or whatever
Yeah,
it is.
I don't know. You call it whatever you
All of the
want, but
above.
exactly. But it to me, it's the best thing that I personally have ever done in my entire life, because I go up on stage, I've got videos, I've got photos. There's one part where the set, it looks like my bedroom, and I'm playing vinyl, discovering Deep Purple, discovering Alice Cooper, discovering all this stuff. And then I talk about all the obvious stories. Some of the most legendary stories of the 80s rock scene happened like this close to me, whether it was the Axl David Bowie fight or the Axl Vince, or you know, all these crazy things. And of course, you know, I was, you know, I say it a million times, I wouldn't be where I was if it wasn't for bands like Guns N' Roses, because they were so helpful to me coming up through the ranks. And you know, that 80s rock scene, and especially the Cat House. The Cat House was not the Sunset Strip. It was kind of more darkish and just bleh. It got bigger. But then I talk about that, and I talk about getting into radio, and you know, beating the hell out of a person and going to jail and losing everything and being broke. I talk about what it was really like on Headbangers Ball. I dissect the Alice in Chains water park episode. I talk about losing everything. I talk about porn star girlfriends. I talk about pretty much everything. And everybody always asks, like, why don't you write a book? Why don't you write a book? And I thought if I was going to write a book, everybody would want me to talk about, well, this is what it was like when I met the guys in this band and this. And that is what my show is. But it also goes into a lot of deeper stuff. And I was like, I didn't think they'd like that in a book. But then I do it in my show, and I see some very humiliating things and some very, you know, I mean, it is rock and roll. It's sex, drugs, rock and roll. And that the show is very, I like it. It's something totally DIY. You know, I don't have a publicist. So I've sold out 2 nights in a really big venue, and I've sold up in venues that almost nobody's there, you know, and that's a learning experience in itself. And I remember my whole life, and I don't know if you ever felt like this at all, Brian, but I've always heard my friends say stuff like, "Yeah, well, I'm going on tour. We're going on tour," and I was always like, "I want to go on tour. I want to," and I always was like so envious of them. Like, remember when we played at this club? When we played at this club, and when your roommate's doing this, and your best friends are doing this, and everybody's talking about it. I always had that envy, and now at this stage of my life, I get to go on tour, and I mean, we're low budget, you know. Well, you know, you know, we're driving in a van, or I had to lease a truck to go do this tour, but I still get to go up and I get on stage and I play, and everybody, and am I having these rock star dreams, whether it's 400 people or 40, this is great. And I just hope everybody goes to my show. And I got a show in Detroit, which I'm excited about. And my 50th show ever will be in Cleveland. I sold out Sydney, Australia. I mean, these are the
That's
things,
amazing.
like when people say like things that you never dreamed of, this would be like the biggest dream that I thought could not possibly come true.
That's awesome.
I'm making less money than I've made in a very long time, but it's really,
But
really
it's
fun.
fun. So that's
It's
why it works.
Brian, it's
So
so great.
so where can people go to find out where the dates are and get tickets and all that good
I've
stuff?
only got 9 shows coming up, and if they go to cathousehollywood.com, they can find the link at cathousehollywood.com, which is lovely right there in
There
purple.
you go.
And you know, I'll play anywhere. If anybody that owns a club or is a promoter, just contact me through there or any of the social medias, because I will play anywhere as long as I can break even, maybe make a little bit of money. And I just love doing it. I'm really bummed when you weren't at my show Vegas, because I wanted to impress you in
Trust me,
Vegas.
I
I
was
played
bummed too.
I played the night in Vegas. I'm excited. Vegas, Vegas, Vegas. That was the night when all of the computers crashed and every flight was shut down.
I know.
And
I
I'm like,
know.
really? Like, there's a couple people that have not seen, like, you're one of them. I really want Del James to see my show,
Oh yeah,
you
Dell's the
know,
best.
because Del is so intelligent. He's a great writer, and he was right here the whole time. And, you know,
Yep.
I want him. And there are a lot of people, you know, it's funny doing my show, telling some of these things. Like when I played in Hollywood, you know, I'm telling some of these stories with the people that are in the audience, and that was always really cool. But it's neat, like, you know, and I played played at the Stardust Ballroom, and Alan from Life of Agony brought his whole family,
Oh,
you
nice.
know, and I was like, I like these things really make me feel good when people that are from bands come to see me perform, because I've been doing that forever, and I love doing it so much.
Well, everybody go see Rikki when he comes to your town. Thank you so much for
Please,
doing this, my friend. This was
so much
amazing.
fun. Thank
I
you,
could
brother.
talk all day, but we have time constraints,